when your county votes for Trump and the bartender looks like I do, people kind of assume that you're on the same page. But sometimes you actually are. So here's my hunch. For all the focus on culture war issues, the working class on the left and the right have a lot more in common than we're led to believe.
Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I am Kristen Bry. She is Jane Metnair, and that was the opening segment from a new video from our friend of the show, John Russell, and More Perfect Union that was put out a week ago, 2 weeks ago, that I thought was very enlightening. It was not as hilarious as a Jordan Klepper going to a Trump rally, but it was... That. I mean, it was funny, but it wasn't, you weren't making a joke out of the people you were talking to like he typically does. And, sometimes you want to see both. And so welcome back to the show, John Russell. It's so good to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Yeah. And I guess my first question is for people who are listening and not watching the show right now, how would you describe what you look like, since you said when you look like me?
Generic white guy with a mullet.
So as if you've not heard John on our show before, you don't follow him on social media at Hey John Russell, you should. But he is an Upper Ohio Valley guy. He's on TikTok and Instagram. He makes great videos. He's the author of the Holler, which is an Appalachian based independent media for the fed up working class. You work in conjunction sometimes with More Perfect Union, and which is another organization that does a lot of media around working class issues and problems. And you guys worked together on this video for you to go to a Trump rally. Where was the Trump rally?
This was in Erie, Pennsylvania. And
okay.
Yeah, thanks for nailing my intro there. There's a lot of hobbies.
There's multiple hats.
You forgot my whittling. I like to carve wood.
So I guess were you always planning on going to the rally and then teamed up with More Perfect Union? Did they ask you to go?
Yeah. So first of all, working with More Perfect Union has been really great. If listeners aren't following them, it's worth a follow. But
yeah,
we went up to this rally based on a hunch. I worked in a Rust Belt dive bar for a year. I moved bars to a slightly nicer place.
Oh, you moved bars?
I did. I know, it's an upgrade. I actually have to use sweet vermouth now, which would have gotten you laughed out of my prior establishment. But from working in this bar, I mean, I grew up in the Ohio Valley. And if you don't know about the Ohio Valley, it's one of the regions that's experienced the biggest political shift out of anywhere in the country. And it went from labor, union, Democrat voting to in the tank for Trump. And when you're working in a dive bar, it's just unavoidable to, talk politics, and I can't help myself anyway. So here I am working in this bar. I'm very left-leaning. I didn't make any bones about that. And I was talking to a lot of people who really love Donald Trump, and it went surprisingly well. So that was the hunch we took up to this Trump rally, and decided to see if we could have those kind of conversations online. And we got some pretty interesting answers.
And you did. Was this your first Trump rally you've ever gone to? I would imagine you maybe have gone to ones in the past.
Yeah. No, this was the first one.
Okay. And so I guess what were you expecting? Because like you said, it's not like you're new to these types of conversations because you've been having them in your bar. But I guess what were you expecting versus what did you actually experience going?
What we got out of that rally is what I expected going in, really. But, that wasn't surprising just because I grew up in areas that are very similar to Erie. The Rust Belt has interesting politics, and Donald Trump, the one thing he's really good at, besides committing crimes, is sensing where the public is and where there's discontent and how to kind of harness that. And he honed in on the Rust Belt. But, I expected to go up there and have conversations about, labor unions and, fighting on class-based issues together. And that's a lot of what we got. But, we didn't see that represented in a lot of the interviews from people going to these rallies.
Yeah. And I think that's what I was surprised with when I watched it was... I think in your intro, you kind of say the what divides the working class on the left versus the right. And I think so much of the conversations you had, at least what made it to the video, are the qualms or the frustrations are not that different from what you hear from a lot of working class people, no matter what their their politics are, right? And then there's just this like how you choose to align and who you think can actually fix that. But I guess, what do you think coming out of this differentiates working class left versus working class right folks?
Honestly, this might sound like an odd answer. I think the only thing that's really responsible for the massive division that we all feel and this massive polarization is the fact that we live in an environment, all of us across the political spectrum, of engineered division. Because engineered division is profitable. When you have both sides hating each other, there's a lot of clicks to be had. There's a lot of ads to be sold. You can run, two political parties solely based on the issues that divide us. And that can, come to define your entire politics without anybody having to address the issues that we're united on. The fact that half of the country couldn't deal with a surprise medical expense without, being pushed into financial ruin. Those are things that unite us. But the space to talk about that, in our culture doesn't produce as many clicks, doesn't sell as many ads, doesn't quite fit into the media ecosystem the way we have it set up. So, now I've rambled and forgotten your initial question, but we're all kind of a product of this engineered division.
Well, I think the question was, which I think you kind of answered it, but I also feel like there's probably still more to say, is like, what really fundamentally do you think is the difference between working class people, working poor, who then, but ideologically, they are either right versus left. And so you just said like there probably is more that actually does unite them, or that should unite them as far as the issues that they care about, but they're not. And so it's like, what can you think that the actual differences are of why, if you are someone who makes 30 grand a year, less than 30 grand a year, what has been the pattern in all the work that you've done where you feel like someone gravitates towards Trump or gravitates towards Bernie? Right, or somewhere in between.
So we all have, it's kind of like we can shop for our own political opinions. I mean, the landscape of media choices, you can tune in to your choice of media. That'll give you a red or blue pool noodle. And then you take your pool noodle out and you clobber the other side with it, right? And that's kind of the division that we're seeing today. And you could say that's the culture wars, right? A lot of the conversation in response to this video has been, all right, do we fight the class war or do we fight the culture war? But to me, they're both inseparable. And that's the large point that I took coming out of this rally. If you're only focusing on culture war issues, what you get is permanent division, which feels like what we're in right now. But if you only focus on class war without, defending people's right to be who they are, what most people would call culture war issues, then the unity that you need to have as a class of people, and I take a broad definition with working class. If you have to get up and go to work in the morning to survive, in my book, that makes you working class anymore, especially with, wealth inequality, how it is right now. But one can't happen without the other, right? I think class is what we all share in common. We all have to go to work in the morning to survive. And the culture war, to me, just boils down to, do you respect the freedom of people that are different than you? And I think in these conversations at the rally, to me, they made it seem possible to recenter our politics on class issues, the things that we share in common. And you might hear a lot of crazy stuff, a lot of intense stuff from the Trump folks. But when you put them to it that way, do you respect people's freedom to be different than you, to be who they are? That goes over well, right? But what party or what major media organization is really arguing for something like that? We haven't really had it tested at a large scale, and I think we should.
And it is interesting that you brought that up because I was reading the comments and I did see a lot of that of like, even if we agree on some of the class stuff, I'm never going to be able to get over the fact that they're racist or whatever. And we had a question from one of our listeners, Price. He sent this in last week. And he said, just a quick note, when John is on next week, I watched the interview and was impressed by his questions and the answers. However, the one aspect I'm interested in is the racial resentment angle. A big driver of Trump voters was sticking it to the other. And I'm wondering if he asked about that to the people he spoke to.
Yeah, that's another conversation. We're going to make this a series. And I think, we have had so many years of really, right-wing propaganda has been very massive. It's been 50 years. It's been financed by billions of dollars. It's 24/7 and on every device. So they've got, millions of Americans tuning in 8 hours a day or hours and hours every single day, right? I think the progress that you can expect to make to reverse all of that is going to take longer than a conversation in line with people at the rally. Do I think it's possible, though? Yes. A lot of the, resenting the other, when you really start to drive at that in a conversation, to me, it's obvious that those kind of opinions, I don't think they're really coming from within people. I think people are getting them from, media networks. They're being suggested to people. Hey, the economic anxiety you feel is because all the people different than you. That's kind of what's been whispered out over all of these years. But in these face-to-face conversations, nobody's as bad as their worst political moment. And I think there's, opportunity to have those conversations. And I hope to do that in the next versions of these. Yeah.
Well, if you're going to keep doing this, I'm excited to see that because, as we have indictment after indictment after indictment after indictment, all four that have come down in succession, 91 counts, and poll after poll after poll, there are people who do not care, right? And so we'll play the one clip as far as, someone who voted for Trump despite knowing
the way he is.
Capitalism's not the problem. It's been corrupted to such a level, just like people think all the politicians are corrupted. But it's corrupted at the highest levels of these corporations, like you said, being owned. Instead of 200 of them, you're down to 4. That's massive control.
You think somebody like Trump with the billions in the business, I mean, we're talking about really large monopolies here. He's more in their peer group.
Yeah, I agree. You're right.
He has a financial interest to do that kind of policy.
I always even consider Trump even like a crony capitalist. He's not perfect. You know what I mean? He was a capitalist guy, and everybody always read where he would eminent domain against take the lady, kick her out of her house for all that stuff. Yeah, that's falls into that. Like I said, I don't know, I come to a Trump rally. Doesn't mean I think he's the greatest guy.
So Jane picked that one out, and I think it's this. Despite everything, despite the fact that he is a capitalist, that he is a millionaire, billionaire,
that he had a terrible track record of stiffing people,
that his actual track record beyond even the crimes, but actually how he stands up for the class that you're talking to, and that largely supports him. Like the evidence just isn't there. And so we have to go to a break. But when we come back, I'd love to talk to you about why you think, like, what is it? Like in the conversations you've had, what is it that it's this guy? Not that it's the Republican Party, that it's him. And if there's anything that's going to, besides death or a stroke, that would ever change their mind about not having allegiance to this guy. So our guest is John Russell, who is the author of The Holler. You can find him at Hey John Russell. He'll be back on the other side of the break. You got a joke, man?
Oh, I sure do. Where's the king keep his armies?
I don't know.
In his sleeveys.
All right, we'll be right back. This is As Goes Wisconsin. Welcome back to As Goes Wisconsin. I'm Kristen Bry. She is Jane Madnair, and our guest is John Russell, who is the author of the Holler, and he makes online videos, which is how he and I originally met on TikTok and Instagram, about the working class and the fed up working class specifically. And we wanted to bring him on today to talk about his initial one, many to come, but video going to Trump rallies, having sincere conversations with Trump voters about what actually we can agree on, what the differences actually are. It was posted August 9th. I'll link the video to today's show notes so you can go back and watch it because it is very good. And the question I posed before the break was, you know, this kind of phenomenon that so many people I think have of are like question of like, how is there still this many people who, despite the indictments, despite the track record, despite the losing record, are still Trump or bust? And so in your conversations, not that you're going to get them to flip parties, but what is it about him? And do you think there's anything that actually would get them to walk away from this guy?
Yeah, I was thinking about your question in the break, and I'm surrounded by friends who love pro wrestling, and I've always kind of,
Do you love pro wrestling, John?
Oh, big time, yeah. Every Monday, in Wheeling, West Virginia, we gather in a garage and we watch Monday Night Raw. But then I yesterday, if you haven't looked it up, go look up the clips of Donald Trump and WWE, right? And I think it kind of says a lot about his appeal, because his rallies are kind of like that. I mean, look, talking about Donald Trump is hard because, on the one hand, he's a total joke. And on the other hand, he's the most serious thing that's a real threat to everybody, including, the most marginalized people first. But I think what it is about, Donald Trump, if he looks good at all, if it's possible for him to look good, it's only in relation to how everything else is going. And how is everything else going? Mitch McConnell and Dianne Feinstein, they're dying on live TV. I mean, our leaders are very old. We have incredible problems. You couldn't, New York City was orange. Hawaii is on fire. One man lost $200 billion and was still the world's second richest man. And this at a time when most of the country, really feels like they're not getting ahead. So, when you look out at that landscape, you're not really thinking about politics a lot because you got other stuff going on in your life. And you see some guy out there who power bombed Vince McMahon and, was our former president. If you want a different direction, I'm pretty sure that you're going to get something different than what we've been expecting if you go with Donald Trump. So I think a lot of that is his appeal. Now, unfortunately, millions of people walking into those rallies, whether they know it or not, are empowering a person with an agenda that'll, eventually come for us all, starting with, the powerless first. But what do I see that could possibly stop that? This was one of the main focuses of what we talked about up there. And I think it's the new labor movement energy, and the new media, honestly, that we're seeing on TikTok. I mean, let's start with the labor movement first. The kind of goal was to go up to this Trump rally and say, hey, do you support UPS workers winning $30 billion by standing together against one of the largest corporations? The answer from the Trump rally attendees, yes. Do you want to see Trump on a picket line? Yes. Do you want to see all politicians supporting this new labor movement that we have going? Yes. So in there, I could see a large change to our politics. And, a lot of it feels like it's set in stone, but Donald Trump was never supposed to be president. Neither was Barack Obama. These things can change overnight. And, historically, when we have won really large progressive things for society, those have been built on a foundation of organized workers who, could elect people that stood with organized workers. And forever, there was never a question about what party did that. It's kind of a shame to say, but there is a question about that now.
Yeah.
But with so much new energy in the labor movement, I think that's the way forward. And a lot of the people in line also share that.
Which I
passionate.
Find, yeah,
I like that was a great answer.
It was a great answer. But again, I just find it so interesting. The hero of the right is Ronald Reagan, who was the one who began the deunionizing push.
Yep. And it's interesting because a lot of the interviewees we talked to, they were trashing Ronald Reagan. They were trashing Dick Cheney. We talked to a guy who worked for Halliburton. I mean, a lot of these figures on the right, Donald Trump hijacked that party. I mean, the Wall Street had a favorite party there. Then Trump came in and took it over and talked about how free trade sucks. And a lot of people said, yeah. So, I think there's a lot of very strong opinions that are loosely held. And like I said, nothing in politics is set in stone. And I could see it changing and shifting a lot.
All right. Well, should we end on some jokes?
Let's go.
Let's end on some jokes. You can rate them, John. What do we get from the listeners?
All right, here we go. John, did you hear about the new car made of paper?
No.
It was stationary.
Why did
why did the bed go to court?
Why?
It was about a pillowcase.
Oof. Very nice. I think I like that one. Let's go with that one over the first. Yeah.
Okay. This is a very specific, not sure if this is the joke that you're looking for. Donald Trump.
The best of all.
And then there was one snarky one about the superintendent of schools here in Waukesha, which we'll just let that one go.
Okay. You want to hear the only one I remember as a kid that was probably inappropriate for me to know as a kid anyways.
Oh, great.
So I was on swim team. I was a pretty good swimmer as a kid. And there was a joke that was like, there was a blonde, a brunette, and a redhead that were all swimming against each other. And it was a 50-meter breaststroke. And they all jumped in. And the blonde got first. No, the redhead got first. The brunette got second. And the blonde was way, way behind. And she got out of the pool and she said, well, that's not fair. They use their arms.
All the way through the joke, I was sweating. I was hot. I was sweating.
You can imagine me at like 11 telling that joke, especially.
Did you even get it? Did you even get it when you were 11?
I remembered it enough to get it. So. All right. Well, John, thank you so much. We're going to have you back because we didn't even get to an East Palestine update because I know you're working on that. But we appreciate so much of the work that you do on the ground with your independent reporting. Follow at Hey John Russell. Subscribe to the Holler. Thank you for your work. We'll talk to you soon, bud.
Y'all are the best. See you, Wisconsin.
All right. Well, that was a fun show. We'll bring the jokes back tomorrow, maybe, if we get some more. But thanks for everyone who listened and joined. We'll be back tomorrow at 10. This has been As Goes Wisconsin.